Just pretend we're in love. The billionaire begs the waitress, but one kiss makes it real. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. Rain fell softly against the glass windows of a small cafe tucked on a quiet Manhattan corner. Inside, the last few customers were finishing their drinks, their voices blending with the low hum of jazz that played through the speakers. The light was warm and golden, but for Lina Torres, the young waitress wiping the counter, the world felt cold and heavy. Her shoes were damp from the rain she had tracked in. Her fingers ached from the double shift she had taken to cover rent. Outside, taxis splashed through puddles, and the neon sign of the cafe flickered faintly like it, too, was tired. Lina took a deep breath and checked the clock above the espresso machine. 11:45. Almost closing time. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out her phone. One new notification glowed on the cracked screen. Final notice, tuition payment overdue. Her stomach twisted. She had hoped the extra shifts this week would be enough, but life seemed to always demand a little more than she could give. The door suddenly opened, letting in a rush of cold wind and the smell of rain. A man stepped inside, tall, in a dark suit that probably cost more than a year of her rent. His hair was slicked back, drops of water still clinging to his collar. He looked around the empty cafe, eyes sharp but distant, as if he was carrying the weight of a storm much heavier than the one outside. "Sorry, sir," Lina said quickly, brushing a stray hair from her face. "We are about to close, but I can still get you something hot to drink." He did not answer at first. Instead, he studied her face, then the empty tables, then the "close soon" sign by the door. Finally, his voice came, low and steady. "I am not here for coffee." Lina hesitated. "Oh, then what can I help you with?" The man exhaled, his jaw tightening. For a moment, she thought he might leave. Instead, he stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You work here, right? You are free after your shift?" Lina blinked. "That depends on who is asking." "Ethan Cole," he said. "Cole Enterprises." Her eyes widened slightly. She had heard that name. Everyone in New York had. Billionaire. Tech tycoon. The man who turned startups into empires and empires into legends. What on earth was he doing in a cafe like this, talking to someone like her? He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a folded newspaper, and laid it on the counter. The front page headline screamed, "Ethan Cole's wedding canceled, scandal erupts before shareholders gala." She glanced at him, unsure if she should say something. His face was unreadable. "I need your help," he said finally, voice almost a whisper. "Just for tonight." Lina frowned. "My help? With what exactly?" Ethan's eyes softened just slightly, though his tone stayed firm. "I need you to pretend to be someone. My girlfriend. For a few days. Nana's setting dot well. With a man by their will piece. It's say their habal dub." She let out a nervous laugh, thinking it was a joke. "You must be kidding." "I am not," he replied. "I have a shareholder dinner tomorrow. Everyone will be watching. If they think I have moved on, the chaos dies down. My company stays steady." Lina shook her head, gripping the counter towel like it was a lifeline. "And you just walked in here to hire a stranger for that?" He met her gaze. "A stranger is exactly what I need. Someone real. Someone who does not play games." Silence hung in the air. The jazz track changed to a slow piano melody. Rain streaked the windows like tears. Lina could feel her heart pounding. Everything about this man screamed danger, not the kind you run from, but the kind that could pull you into a story you were not ready for. "I do not even know you," she said softly. "You do not need to," he answered. "You just have to pretend." Lina swallowed hard. "Pretend what?" He took a slow step closer, the light catching in his eyes something between exhaustion and desperation. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said the words that would change both their lives. "Just pretend we are in love. For tonight." And in that quiet cafe, beneath the hum of the rain and the dim glow of the neon sign, Lina realized this was not just another customer, not just another long night at work. It was the beginning of something she could never have imagined, a deal that would test her heart, her integrity, and the fine line between what is fake and what is real. Lina stared at him, trying to read his expression. The rain kept tapping on the glass, the world outside blurred in silver streaks. It sounded like time itself was pausing, waiting for her answer. "I do not think I am the kind of person you are looking for," she said quietly. "I serve coffee. I do not attend billionaire galas." Ethan's gaze did not waver. "That is exactly why I asked you." He placed a business card on the counter. "Come to this address tomorrow at 10 in the morning. My assistant will give you the details." And the walk of She looked down at the thick white card, Cole Enterprises, embossed in silver letters. She could see her own reflection trembling in the glossy surface. When she looked up again, he was already gone. The next morning, Lina woke before dawn. Her mind had raced all night. The logical part of her said it was insane to even consider his offer. But another voice, small, trembling, hopeful, kept whispering, "What if this changes everything?" By the time she arrived at the skyscraper downtown, her thrift store coat was soaked through from the drizzle. She clutched her purse to her chest and entered the marble lobby, feeling the weight of every glance from the perfectly dressed staff. A woman in a tailored suit approached, crisp and composed. "Miss Torres? Mr. Cole is expecting you." Lina followed her through glass corridors that gleamed like mirrors, her sneakers squeaking softly on the floor. They stopped before a set of mahogany doors. The assistant opened them. Ethan stood by the window, the skyline of New York stretching behind him. Morning light hit the sharp lines of his face, but there was something weary in his posture, a heaviness he hid beneath control. "Good morning," he said without turning. "You came," Lina nodded. "I said I would think about it. I am not sure I am saying yes yet." He turned then, his eyes meeting hers. "Sit down," his life tempestuous. On the desk before her was a single document, contract of pretend relationship. The title made her heart jump. "You are serious about this?" she asked. "I do not do jokes," he said simply. "Read it." Her fingers brushed the pages. The contract listed the terms in clean legal language. Asterisk. She would accompany Ethan Cole to 3 public events. Asterisk. She would act as his girlfriend in front of cameras and press. Asterisk. She would keep all details confidential. Asterisk. No physical intimacy unless mutually agreed for public image. Payment. $20,000. She exhaled slowly. "Why me?" "Because you looked at me last night and did not see a billionaire," he said quietly. "You just saw a man standing in the rain." Something in her chest shifted. She tried to hide it with a small laugh. "I still think this is crazy." "Most things worth doing are," he said. Then he handed her a pen. Lina stared at the blank line where her name should go. $20,000 could save her tuition, her rent, her sanity. But what would it cost her dignity? She bit her lip. "All right," she said finally. "But we keep it professional. No real feelings. No pretending beyond what is necessary." Ethan's mouth curved into a faint smile. "Agreed." In the watching of Concetablis, in the wilbing out around her. That afternoon, she found herself in a suite filled with clothes, makeup, and a stylist named Brooke who spoke faster than Lina could breathe. Dresses in silk and satin hung in perfect rows. Brooke circled her with a measuring tape. "You are going to look stunning tonight, honey. Just relax. Pretend you do this every day." Lina tried to laugh, but her stomach was tight. The transformation was dizzying, the hair, the makeup, the perfume that smelled like confidence. When she looked in the mirror, she almost did not recognize the woman staring back. At 7 sharp, Ethan arrived at her hotel room door. He was in a tailored tuxedo, black and immaculate. For a moment, neither spoke. His eyes softened just a fraction. "You look ready," he said. "I feel like a fraud," she whispered. "Good," he said, offering his arm. "That means you will fit right in." The car ride to the gala was silent except for the sound of rain against the roof. Lina watched the city lights blur past, her heartbeat matching the rhythm of the windshield wipers. She wanted to ask him why he was doing this, why he looked so haunted behind that polished mask, but she stayed quiet. When they entered the ballroom, camera flashes exploded. Voices called his name, microphones thrust forward. Ethan's hand found hers, firm and steady, grounding her in the chaos. "This is Lina Torres," he said smoothly. "My partner." Partner. The word echoed in her mind. Reporters leaned in, firing questions. Someone asked how they met. Lina hesitated, panic rising in her throat. But then she remembered his words pretend. She smiled softly and said, "It started with coffee." The crowd laughed, charmed. Ethan glanced at her, something like admiration flickering in his eyes. For the rest of the night, she played her part. The lights, the laughter, the clinking of champagne glasses, all of it felt like a dream she was not supposed to live in. But when he leaned close and whispered, "You are doing great," something real sparked between them. And as they stood under the chandeliers, the billionaire and the waitress, both pretending for the world, Lina wondered if maybe, just maybe, they were both pretending for themselves too. The night after the gala, Lina lay awake in her small apartment, staring at the ceiling as city lights flickered through the window. Her phone buzzed once a message from an unknown number. "Ethan, you did well tonight. Thank you." She typed a polite reply, deleted it, then finally sent only, "You are welcome." She turned off the light, but her heart refused to settle. The evening had gone perfectly, but something in the way Ethan had looked at her still lingered, like there had been more truth in his eyes than in the whole room of smiling investors. The next morning, Lina arrived at Cole Enterprises for what Ethan called day 2 of rehearsal. His office, sleek and silver, overlooked the skyline like a throne above the city. Ethan was already there, reviewing documents. Without looking up, he said, "Sit down, Miss Torres. There are a few updates to the agreement." She frowned. "Updates? You are adding more rules?" He glanced up then, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. "Think of them as adjustments. The gala was only the first event. The next is the board dinner next Friday. I will need you by my side again." Lina folded her arms. "You make it sound like a job interview." "It is," he said simply, "except this time the salary includes dinner, a designer dress, and your own driver." She tried to hide a smile. "You are awfully generous for someone who claims to hate attention." "I do not hate attention," Ethan said. "I just prefer it on my terms." For a brief moment their eyes met, and the air between them shifted. Then he cleared his throat, turning back to his computer. "Our contract remains professional, nothing personal." "Of course," she replied, even as something deep inside her whispered otherwise. Over the next few days, Lina was drawn into Ethan's world press interviews, fittings, rehearsals for social events she had never imagined attending. Yet behind every public smile, she caught glimpses of the man underneath the perfection. Late one evening, she found him alone in his private office. The lights dimmed, his tie loosened, a tumbler of whiskey untouched on the table. He was staring at a photo, an older man in a suit, smiling with pride. She hesitated at the doorway. "I did not mean to interrupt." He looked up, startled. "It is fine. I was just thinking." "Your father?" she asked gently. He nodded once. "He built this company from nothing. Died before I could tell him I was taking over. Every day I wonder if he would have approved of what I became." Lina stepped closer. "He would have. You work hard. You care, even if you hide it behind all that control." Ethan's lips curved slightly. "You read people too well, Miss Torres." "It is part of my job," she said softly. "Waitressing teaches you to notice things others ignore." For a moment, neither spoke. The silence was calm, warm, different from the tension that had first brought them together. Then she turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. "Lina," he said quietly, "do you ever feel like pretending becomes easier than being honest? In follow Joss and follow with follow." She looked back at him, her expression unreadable. "Maybe, but if you pretend long enough, sometimes you forget where the lie ends and the truth begins." He nodded slowly, as if the words struck deeper than she could know. That night, as Lina rode home through the quiet streets, she replayed every moment in her mind. The contract, the gala, his voice, his eyes. What had begun as a job was becoming something far more complicated. In the reflection of the car window, she saw herself dressed like someone who belonged to another life. But beneath the makeup and glamour, she was still the girl who counted every dollar, who dreamed of paying her debts and escaping her small apartment. Yet now, when she thought of Ethan Cole, the billionaire who had asked her to pretend, her heart ached in ways she could not explain. Because deep down, she feared that the line between their contract and her feelings was already starting to blur. and that maybe the biggest risk she had taken was not signing the agreement, but allowing herself to care. The board dinner arrived faster than Lina expected. The grand ballroom of the Crestmont Hotel glittered beneath crystal chandeliers, filled with men in suits and women draped in diamonds. Laughter echoed against marble walls, but to Lina, it all sounded distant, like a language she had not yet learned to speak. Ethan stood beside her, immaculate in a charcoal gray suit, his expression calm and unreadable. Every move he made carried authority, the subtle nods, the confident handshake, the polite yet measured smile. He leaned slightly toward her and whispered, "Remember, no fear. You belong here as much as anyone." She exhaled, forcing a steady smile. "Easy for you to say. You are not the one wearing rented shoes." His lips twitched. "I would not have noticed if you had not told me." "Good," she murmured. "Then do not step on them." "In my graze on them." His help did know. For a second, the seriousness in his eyes softened, and that fleeting look felt more comforting than all the lights in the room. As the dinner began, Lina listened to the conversation about mergers, market projections, and shareholder returns. Most of it went over her head, but she smiled and nodded when needed. Every so often, Ethan would glance at her, and she would see something unguarded in his eyes: trust, maybe even pride. When the dessert arrived, a man approached their table. He was older, with slicked hair and an expression that carried both charm and malice. "Ethan," he greeted smoothly, "and this must be the famous girlfriend the press cannot stop talking about. Is it not Ras? Say Joan." Lina extended a hand politely. "Nice to meet you." He ignored it, smirking. "A waitress, I heard? How refreshing. I suppose everyone is pretending to be something in this city." The insult landed like a slap. Before Lina could respond, Ethan's voice cut through the air, calm but edged with steel. "That is enough, Richard. She is here as my guest. Show some respect." Richard chuckled and walked away, but the tension lingered. Lina turned to Ethan. "You did not have to do that." "I did," he said simply. "No one talks down to someone I care about." Her heart skipped. She wanted to believe he meant it, but she reminded herself care about was part of the performance. Still, the warmth in his eyes told a different story. Later that night, after the event ended, Ethan offered to drive her home. The rain had started again, soft and steady against the car windows. The silence between them was comfortable this time, almost peaceful. "Thank you for defending me," she said finally. "You should not have needed defending," he replied. "But sometimes people need to be reminded what respect looks like." She smiled faintly. "You surprise me, Mr. Cole." He glanced at her, his tone quieter now. "You surprise me too." They stopped at a red light. The glow of the street lamps painted his face in amber. There was something fragile in the moment, as if the whole city had gone still around them. "Do you ever get tired of pretending?" she asked. His answer came barely above a whisper. "Every day." When he turned toward her, their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, the world outside disappeared. The air grew thick with the kind of silence that says more than words ever could. She could feel the pull between them, unspoken, undeniable. But before anything else could happen, the light turned green, and he looked away. They reached her building, and she unbuckled her seatbelt slowly. "Good night, Ethan." "Good night, Lina," he said, his voice low, almost reluctant. She stepped out into the rain, the cool drops soaking through her coat. As the car drove off, she stood there for a moment, staring at the taillights fading into the distance. Something inside her had shifted. The contract still bound them on paper, but in her heart, the lines were blurring faster than she could control. And as she climbed the narrow stairs to her apartment, one thought kept echoing in her mind: she had promised to pretend. But pretending was starting to feel dangerously real. The following week arrived with an invitation neither of them could avoid. The Carter Foundation Charity Gala, the city's most publicized event of the season. For Ethan, it was a chance to restore his image after the scandal. For Lina, it was another test, another night of pretending. Brooke, the stylist, adjusted the strap of Lina's navy gown and stepped back with a satisfied sigh. "You look like a woman who belongs in a billionaire's world," she said proudly. Lina smiled nervously. "Let us hope I can convince everyone else." When Ethan appeared at the door, time seemed to slow. He looked at her not as a hired companion, but as someone who had just stolen the air from the room. For a second, the usually composed billionaire could not find words. "You look perfect," he finally said. Lina laughed softly, trying to mask the way her heart reacted. "I suppose the contract covers compliments too?" He smiled faintly. "That one is on the house." The ballroom that night was dazzling. Golden chandeliers sparkled above a sea of glittering gowns and tailored tuxedos. The moment Ethan and Lina entered, heads turned. Cameras flashed. The murmurs began almost immediately, curiosity mixed with envy. As they made their way through the crowd, Lina could feel eyes tracking her every move. But she remembered Ethan's words from before. "No fear. You belong here." So she lifted her chin, slipped her arm through his, and walked like she had been born for this. A journalist approached with a microphone. "Mr. Cole, the city is thrilled to see you back in public. Who is the lovely woman at your side?" Ethan's hand tightened around hers. "This is Lina Torres," he said clearly. "She is the reason I'm standing here tonight." Lina froze, caught off guard by his honesty. The crowd reacted with polite applause, though some faces showed disbelief. As they moved away, she whispered, "You did not have to say that." "I wanted to," he replied. "Sometimes the truth is more powerful than the performance." During dinner, a sudden commotion erupted near the stage. One of the servers had tripped, spilling champagne across a guest's gown. The room went tense. The hostess began to shout at the young man, her voice cutting through the music. Without thinking, Lina stood up. "It was an accident," she said firmly, stepping between them. "No one deserves to be humiliated for doing their job." The crowd fell silent. The young waiter looked at her with gratitude, and even the hostess seemed too stunned to respond. Ethan's gaze on her was steady, half pride, half awe. When she sat down, he leaned closer. "You just saved that man's job." She shrugged lightly. "Maybe people just need someone to remind them of kindness once in a while." He studied her for a moment. "You keep doing that." "Doing what?" "Making me forget where the act ends." Her breath caught. Before she could respond, the orchestra began to play a slow waltz. Ethan rose and offered his hand. "Dance with me." She hesitated, then placed her hand in his. As they moved across the floor, everything else faded. The cameras, the whispers, the world outside their small circle. His hand rested lightly on her back, her head near his shoulder, and for the first time since signing that contract, she stopped pretending. When the song ended, he looked down at her, his voice barely above a whisper. "Lina, I do not know what this is anymore." She met his gaze, her heart pounding. "Maybe it is time we stop pretending to know." The U is Ladavlokemp in and Alive with Brick 9. The applause from the audience brought them back to reality, but in that moment, both knew something irreversible had changed. Because under the glittering lights and fake smiles, one truth had quietly bloomed. What started as an arrangement was turning into something real, and neither of them was ready for what that meant. That night after the gala, Lina could not sleep. The sound of the waltz still echoed in her head, mingling with the memory of Ethan's hand on her waist and the way he had looked at her like she was not part of the act anymore. She replayed it again and again until the lines between fantasy and reality completely vanished. By morning, she decided to take a walk to clear her thoughts. The streets of Manhattan were quieter than usual, washed clean by the rain from the night before. When she reached the cafe where everything had started, she stopped outside the window and smiled faintly. A week ago, she had been wiping tables there. Now she was standing in designer heels, pretending to be the girlfriend of a billionaire. Life, she thought, could change faster than the weather. Her phone buzzed. "Ethan, meet me at the penthouse at noon. There is something I want to show you." Curiosity outweighed caution. When Lina arrived, the elevator doors opened to a panoramic view of the city bathed in gold. Ethan stood near the glass wall, sleeves rolled up, his expression unreadable. "You came," he said quietly. "You asked," she replied. "What is all this about?" He motioned toward a large canvas resting on an easel. The painting was half finished, filled with rough brushstrokes of gray and gold. "It was my father's," he said. "He painted whenever the company faced trouble. He said it helped him see patterns, chaos, finding order." Lina stepped closer. "It is beautiful. You are finishing it?" Ethan nodded. "Trying to. I thought maybe if I completed, I could finally stop chasing what he left undone." She looked at him, sensing the vulnerability behind the calm facade. "Maybe some things are not meant to be completed, Ethan. Maybe they are meant to remind us that we are still human." He studied her face, his eyes softer than she had ever seen. You always know how to say things that make sense in ways I cannot explain. She smiled. That is because I am not pretending right now. Silence lingered between them, quiet and fragile. Then, as if drawn by gravity, Ethan took a slow step closer. His voice was low, trembling slightly. You make me forget the rules we set, Lina. Her pulse quickened. Then maybe the rules were wrong. He hesitated, searching her eyes for something real. If I kiss you right now, it will not be for the cameras or the contract. The nether we're getting a proper word. Then do not do it for them, she whispered. Do it because you want to. He reached out, his hand brushing her cheek, and the distance between them disappeared. The kiss was soft at first, cautious, but it deepened with every heartbeat. All the pretending, all the walls they had built, melted away in that single moment. When they finally pulled apart, Lina's voice was barely audible. Now what happens to the contract? Ethan's answer came with a faint smile. Maybe we rewrite it without lies this time. She laughed softly, though her eyes shimmered. Careful, Mr. Cole. You might start sounding human. He chuckled, but his gaze stayed tender. I have been human since the night you looked at me and did not see my money. Outside, the rain began again, drumming gently against the windows. For once, neither of them moved to close the distance. They stood in silence. Two people caught between the world they had faked and the one they had just discovered was real. And in that quiet, Lina realized something she had been afraid to admit. The story she had walked into for survival had turned into something far more dangerous. It had turned into love. For a few blissful days, Lina and Ethan lived in an unspoken truce between love and secrecy. Their meetings were quieter now, morning coffee shared in silence, brief smiles exchanged in hallways, and a tenderness that needed no words. It felt fragile but real, like sunlight after a storm. But peace never lasted long in Ethan Cole's world. The storm arrived one Friday morning in the form of a headline splashed across every business channel. Billionaire Ethan Cole's relationship exposed, waitress paid to play girlfriend. Lina's phone buzzed nonstop. Her social media flooded with cruel comments and fake stories. She stood frozen in her tiny apartment, watching her name scroll across the television. The world had found out, and it twisted their truth into a scandal. Then the knock came. Ethan's driver, Mr. Cole, asked me to bring you to the office. When she entered his headquarters, reporters swarmed outside the glass doors, shouting questions. Inside, the boardroom was filled with executives. Ethan stood at the head of the table, his expression carved from stone. His ex-fiancée, Vivian Hart, sat across from him with a satisfied smile. Well, Vivian said sweetly, it seems your little romance was a business arrangement after all. How poetic. Lina's stomach turned. She realized Vivian must have been the one who leaked the story. Ethan's silence felt heavy, and for the first time, Lina could not tell if he was protecting her or himself. The chairman of the board spoke coldly. Mr. Cole, this scandal jeopardizes the company's reputation. We cannot afford distractions. Vivian leaned back, feigning concern. Perhaps ending this performance would restore confidence. Lina turned to Ethan, her voice shaking. Say something. Tell them it was not like that. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. His silence cut deeper than any accusation. The chairman continued. Until this matter is resolved, your partnership with Miss Torres must end immediately. Do we have an understanding? Lina's chest burned. She waited for Ethan to object, but he only lowered his gaze. She forced a bitter laugh. I see. The billionaire protects his empire, not the truth. Lina, he began, but she stepped back. Do not, she said, her voice breaking. You wanted me to pretend, remember? Consider this my last act. She turned and walked out of the boardroom. Cameras flashed as she pushed through the front doors, tears mixing with the cold air. That night, Ethan sat alone in his office. The city outside glittered, but all he saw was the reflection of his own failure. Vivian's voice echoed in his head. You should have known better than to play with someone beneath you. He ignored her calls. Instead, he stared at the painting he and Lina had looked at together. The brushstrokes seemed unfinished, chaotic. He reached for a paintbrush, tracing gold over the gray. Remembering her words, maybe some things are not meant to be completed. His assistant entered quietly. Sir, the press conference is in the morning. Should I prepare a statement? Ethan shook his head. No statement. Just one truth. Across the city, Lina sat in her apartment, packing her things. The noise outside faded into the background. She had tried to convince herself that it had all been just a contract, but her heart refused to listen. She opened her phone, her finger hovering over Ethan's name, then stopped. "No more pretending," she whispered to herself. She turned off the phone and closed her eyes, unaware that somewhere across the city, Ethan was doing the same, both of them, caught between love and pride, each waiting for the other to be brave first. The next morning, the city woke to headlines louder than the storm before. Cole Enterprises had announced a press conference. Ethan Cole would speak publicly for the first time since the scandal. Every network was ready, every reporter waiting to see how the billionaire would save his name. Lina did not plan to watch it. She had spent the entire night boxing up her life, ready to leave New York behind. But as she passed the small television in the cafe where she used to work, the sound of Ethan's voice made her stop. "Good morning," he said to a room full of flashing cameras. His tone was calm, but his eyes carried a weight no suit could hide. "I will not take questions today. I am only here to tell the truth." The room went silent. Ethan took a breath. "The woman you have all seen in the headlines, Lina Torres, was not part of a marketing stunt. Yes, there was a contract at first. I asked her to help me. I paid her. That much is true." Murmurs filled the room. He raised a hand, silencing them. "But what I did not expect was that she would teach me something money never could: honesty, kindness, and what it means to actually care." He paused, his voice lowering. "After the first day, there was no more pretending. Everything after that was real. And if protecting my company means lying about the woman I love, then this company does not deserve me." Gasps echoed through the crowd. Cameras clicked wildly. Lina's breath caught as she stood frozen in the cafe doorway, her heart pounding. He had said, "Love." Ethan stepped away from the podium, ignoring the chaos behind him. "That is all," he said simply, and walked off stage. Across town, social media exploded. The story flipped instantly. Billionaire admits to real love. Some called it reckless, others called it the most genuine thing they had ever seen. But none of that mattered to Lina. She could not think, could barely breathe. Moments later, her phone buzzed again, a message from an unknown number. "I am where it all began." Her pulse quickened. She knew exactly what that meant. She ran through the rain, her heels splashing through puddles, until she reached the small cafe. The same one where he had first appeared, the same window where he had said, "Just pretend we are in love." Ethan stood by the counter, soaked from the storm. His tie loosened, his expression raw and unguarded. "You were not supposed to say that on live television," Lina said, breathless. "You just gave the media a field day." "I do not care," he said softly. "Let them talk. For once, I wanted to tell the truth." She crossed her arms, trying to keep her voice steady. "And what if I do not want to be part of your redemption story?" He took a step closer. "Then do not be. Be part of my life instead." Lina hesitated, torn between pride and the ache in her chest. "You broke my trust, Ethan." "I know," he said quietly, "but I am here to earn it back. No contracts, no pretending. Just me." For a long moment, the only sound was the rain on the roof. Then Lina exhaled, the tension leaving her shoulders. "You really are terrible at giving up, you know that?" He smiled faintly. "I am learning from you." She shook her head, tears mixing with the rain. "If this goes wrong again, I am making you clean tables with me." Ethan laughed softly. "Deal." As thunder rolled outside, they stood facing each other, two people who had lost everything but found something stronger in return. When he reached for her hand, she did not pull away. The world outside still called it a scandal. But to them, it finally felt like the truth. 1 year later, the cafe on that quiet Manhattan corner looked completely different. Its name glowed in soft golden letters above the door, Real Love Cafe. Inside, the walls were lined with local art, sunlight spilled across wooden tables, and laughter replaced the sound of rain that once filled its silence. Behind the counter, Lina poured coffee for a couple seated near the window. Her apron was no longer a symbol of exhaustion but of pride. Business was good, but more than that, it was hers. When she turned to hang her towel, the bell above the door chimed. She looked up and smiled. Ethan stood there holding a single white lily and that same quiet grin that had once melted through all her walls. He was dressed simply today, no tuxedo, no boardroom armor, just a man who looked like he had found peace. "Good morning, Miss Torres," he said softly. Mr. Cole, she replied with mock formality. You are late. Coffee's on the house only until 10. He walked closer, setting the flower on the counter. Then I will pay double, for old time's sake. She laughed. You do not need to buy anything, Ethan. You helped me start this place. He shook his head. You built it. I just invested in your dream. Their eyes met, filled with the quiet understanding of two people who had fought to be honest, to be real. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Lina frowned, curious. What is that? Ethan handed it to her. Do you remember the contract we signed? The one that started everything? She nodded, smiling a little. How could I forget? Read the last page, he said. Her eyes scanned the familiar legal lines until they stopped at a new handwritten note at the bottom. Clause 5. No more pretending. Ever. Lina looked up, eyes shimmering. You kept it? I rewrote it, he said quietly. And this time, I would like you to sign it again. But not as an agreement, as a promise. Her breath caught. Ethan. He stepped around the counter and took her hands. I spent years signing contracts to protect everything I owned. But you taught me something. The only thing worth protecting is the truth. So here it is, I love you. Not the act, not the image. Just you. Tears blurred her vision. She laughed through them, shaking her head. You really are terrible at proposals, you know? He smiled. Then let me try this way. From his pocket, he pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a simple gold band, elegant and unpolished, engraved with two words, no pretending. The cafe had gone silent now, a few customers watching quietly as Lina's hand covered her mouth. You are serious, she whispered. Completely, he said. Will you marry me, Lina Torres? She blinked away the tears, her smile trembling. On one condition. Anything. You still help me clean tables when we close. He laughed softly, slipping the ring on her finger. Deal. Until died her. It is rejoinable down. Applause erupted around them, but for Lina and Ethan, the world had already narrowed to just the two of them. No contracts, no secrets, no lies. As they stood together behind the counter, the rain began to fall again outside, soft and familiar. Lina looked through the window and whispered. It started with a storm. Ethan leaned in, pressing his forehead against hers. And it ends with peace. The camera of time would fade on that image. The billionaire and the waitress, finally free of pretense, surrounded by the warmth of something real. Because in the end, love had never been about wealth, power, or perfection. It had been about courage, the courage to stop pretending and to choose each other every single day.